Ilhan Omar said she was fighting for justice, but leaked emails show something else. A plan, a payment trail, and a foreign connection that should terrify every American. What happened next shocked even her own party. If you're ready to hear this powerful story, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. The headlines flashed across every screen. Ilhan Omar under fire again. Leaked documents raise questions. But this was not just another media cycle. This was the beginning of something bigger. Because what just came out was not a rumor. It was not gossip. It was a leak, real, documented, and impossible to ignore. A series of internal emails, quietly sent from Ilhan Omar's office, show clear coordination with organizations linked to foreign interests. Not just support, not just advice, but active efforts to redirect American policy in ways that benefit other nations more than our own. Aid packages, funding decisions, quiet backdoor meetings, all laid out, all exposed. And while the evidence spreads like wildfire, the media says nothing. Not a word, not a headline, not a single call for answers. The silence is loud, but the panic behind the scenes? It is even louder. Democratic leaders are scrambling. Phone calls are being made. Damage control is in full swing, because they know this is not going away. This is not about political differences. This is about loyalty. And the question is simple. When given the chance to stand for America, why did she choose to stand with someone else? The lights in the studio were bright. Cameras were locked in. Every major network had tuned in. This was not just a debate. This was a public reckoning. The backdrop read The American Reckoning, bold red and white letters stretched across the screen. In the center of it all sat three figures: Governor Ron DeSantis, calm and composed; Ilhan Omar, cool on the outside but tense beneath the surface; and a moderator who already looked like he regretted being there. Without waiting for any opening statements, DeSantis leaned forward. His voice was sharp, but steady. "Congresswoman," he said, eyes locked on her, "why are American taxpayer dollars funding your friends' organizations overseas?" The room went still. Omar did not flinch. She took a slow breath, then gave a short smile, the kind meant to hide discomfort. "This is another racist attack," she said, her tone cold. "A tired distraction from your party's failures. When you cannot govern, you blame people like me." The moderator shifted in his seat, glancing at the notes in front of him. He opened his mouth to move the conversation forward, but froze when DeSantis cut in again. "You did not answer the question." Omar raised her voice slightly. "I answered it. The only reason this is even being asked is because I am not the person you want me to be. But I will not apologize for doing my job." The tension cracked like glass. Everyone knew they were just getting started. Governor DeSantis leaned back in his chair, then slowly reached for a folder resting on the table. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The room was already holding its breath. "This," he said, holding up a printed document, "is a leaked memo from your office, dated just last year." He let the paper rest between his fingers. Then he looked straight at Ilhan Omar. "In this memo, Congresswoman, you personally pushed for a redirection of federal aid funds, not to an American relief program, not to a vetted international partner, but to an NGO based overseas. An NGO that, according to public records, is operated by your cousin. And that same cousin," he continued, "has ties to a regime flagged by the State Department for human rights abuses and anti-American activity." The screen behind them lit up. The memo appeared in bold black text. Omar's name, the NGO, the funding request. Gasps spread through the audience. DeSantis did not stop. "The same organization has been linked to influence campaigns targeting American universities and online news platforms. And you want us to believe this is all just a coincidence?" Omar rolled her eyes. Then she gave a short laugh that sounded more like a scoff. "This memo is taken out of context," she said, voice tense. "It does not say what you are trying to make it say." The moderator looked toward his earpiece, clearly receiving frantic messages from the production team. He opened his mouth, but no one was listening. The audience murmured louder now. Eyes were locked on the screen. The room had changed. The energy had shifted. And Omar knew it. She had seen it happen before, but never with her name written across the headline. If this story is touching your heart right now, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. DeSantis did not blink. He let the tension sit, then leaned forward, eyes fixed on Omar. "This memo is not an isolated case," he said. "It is part of a pattern, a long one." He counted on his fingers slowly. "You have voted against bipartisan security bills meant to protect Americans. You have described our military presence overseas as occupation. And you have stood with international panels that openly condemn this country, while sitting in a seat paid for by the very people you keep criticizing." The room went quiet again. Then he asked, voice steady and sharp, "How much of this is incompetence, and how much is intentional sabotage?" Omar's face hardened. She did not wait even a second. "I speak truth to power," she snapped. "And if you are afraid of that, maybe you should not be in politics." DeSantis smirked. The audience stirred. The moderator shifted in his chair, unsure whether to step in or let it play out. Omar leaned in now, her voice rising just enough. "You act like questioning the government is betrayal. But you forget, this country was built by people who stood up and demanded better. I am not the problem here. The problem is a system that punishes anyone who refuses to stay silent." The heat between them was real now, and no one, absolutely no one, was looking away. DeSantis leaned forward again, this time with something new in his hand, a printed email. He held it up just enough for the cameras to catch a clear view. "This was sent from your assistant's email account," he said, his voice controlled but cutting. "And before you say this is fake, your office already confirmed the message is real." He paused, just long enough for the words to sink in. "In this email," he continued, "your staff discusses strategies to, and I quote, soften public opinion on U.S. global withdrawal. It also mentions efforts to, and I quote again, amplify narratives that question U.S. legitimacy in international conflicts." The screen behind them lit up again. The text appeared line by line, highlighted. One phrase drew the most attention. "The long game is coalition building and eroding dominance from within." Gasps moved through the audience. DeSantis did not look away. "You are not just criticizing America," he said, staring directly at Omar. "You are working to dismantle its global standing. Not in secret anymore. In writing." Omar blinked. For a moment, her composure slipped. She cleared her throat, then looked to the moderator. "This is Islamophobia," she said, voice harder now. "Plain and simple. I am being targeted because of who I am." DeSantis let out a short breath, part laugh, part disbelief. "No," he said. "This is not Islamophobia. This is treason, wrapped in social justice slogans." He pointed to the screen again. "These are not just bad ideas. They are planned efforts to weaken our role in the world. And you expect the people of this country to believe that calling you out is somehow hate? No. This is called accountability." The audience was frozen. Omar opened her mouth, then closed it again. No one said a word. The damage was done, and it was still spreading. DeSantis did not pause. He held up another folder, thicker this time. More pages. More weight. "Let us talk about money," he said, voice sharp. "Real numbers. Real facts." He opened the folder and pulled out a financial summary. "This NGO," he continued, "the one tied to your cousin, the same one we already discussed, received $2.4 million in federal grant money over the last 3 years." He held the paper high. "That is taxpayer money. That is American money." He turned toward the camera. "And what do we have to show for it?" He flipped the page. No reports. No results. No measurable progress. Just empty statements and vanished funds. Then came the final blow. He lifted a second sheet, this time a photograph. "And this man," he said, pointing at the image, "sits on the board of that same NGO. This photo was taken at an anti-American rally. Overseas. He is holding a sign that says..." He turned the page around so the camera could zoom in. "Death to America." The room froze. "You took money from this country," DeSantis said, "and gave it to people who chant death to America." Omar snapped back. Her voice rose. That is a lie. DeSantis did not flinch. He held the photo up again, this time with a timestamp printed across the corner. Then explain this. The audience gasped. The moderator shifted forward, clearly trying to regain control, but he was too late. Omar's voice cracked slightly as she spoke again. This is twisted. That image is being used out of context. DeSantis stepped forward. No, Congresswoman. What is twisted is taking money from American families, then handing it to people who burn our flag. The words echoed. Omar looked stunned. The crowd was no longer on her side, and she could feel it. Omar's hands clenched around the sides of the podium. Her voice rose, sharp and emotional. This is not a debate. This is political persecution, she said, her words hitting like a wave. You are not here to ask questions. You are here to tear me down. You are here to push a message that says people like me do not belong. She turned to face DeSantis directly. You are a white supremacist hiding behind a suit and a flag, she snapped. And every word you say proves it. The room shifted. Some gasped. Others sat in silence. The moderator looked down, unsure of what to do next. But DeSantis did not flinch. He stood still, calm, his voice low but clear. Still not answering the question, Congresswoman, he said, still dodging the truth. He took a slow breath, then looked her dead in the eye. If you hate this country so much, why are you still here? The silence was instant. Even the audience stopped moving. Omar stared at him. Her lips tightened. Her jaw clenched. Then, she slammed her hand on the podium. Because I want to make it better, she shouted, her voice cracking mid-sentence. Because people like you refuse to see what is broken. But it was too late. The energy in the room had shifted again. The outburst was loud, emotional, uncontrolled. DeSantis tilted his head slightly and waited. He did not need to say anything else. The damage had already been done. DeSantis stood still, letting the silence drag for just a second longer. Then he spoke, calm but sharp. No, he said. You do not want to make this country better. You want to remake it in your image. One where loyalty to America is optional and accountability does not exist. He stepped forward slightly, voice firm. You want a system where you can say whatever you want, do whatever you want, and call it justice. But here's the truth. This country has rules, and those rules apply to everyone, even you. Then he paused, just long enough to let the air tighten. Sources inside the Ethics Committee are already reviewing your connections. There's quiet talk of deeper investigations. And from what I hear, the Department of Homeland Security is not far behind. He turned toward the audience now. Do not be fooled by silence from her party. Behind closed doors, they are already backing away. Slowly, carefully, like people who know something is about to fall. He glanced at Omar one last time. This is not about identity. It is about truth. And the truth is finally catching up. He let the words hang, and the room stayed still. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us, who was the unsung hero in your life?